My name is Bill Brown. I'm the Vice President for Enrollment Management. It is nice to see all the names around the Zoom room. I would invite you, if you'd like to be on, to turn your video on so we know who we're talking to. That would be great. If also, it would be really helpful if you put your name in, and not just maybe not a little more than a first name, perhaps, so that we know who we're talking to and we sort of have that record. That would be really helpful. But it's so nice to have you here. And it's not exactly like being on Hood's campus, but you've got some really great Hood people around the room here that we can help you through the financial aid process and talk about affordability, and we can make how we can make a Hood education affordable. We're going to answer a lot of questions for you, I'm sure. Maybe before you actually ask them, but we'll invite you to ask those questions as we're going through the program. You can do it through the chat or the Q&A, or if you're brave enough, take yourself off of mute and you can voice your question, and we'd be happy to answer it that way. We'll have, and I will be here through the program as well. If you have questions that are outside the financial aid realm, I'm happy to answer those as well. But the real stars of the show are members of our financial aid staff that are here. And to kick things off in that area, I'd like to introduce our Director of Financial Aid, Melina Verity. Melina?
You're on mute. I got it. Hello. Thank you, Bill. You think you always remember to unmute yourself, and then you get a little thing saying, press the space bar, unmute. And our colleagues kindly remind us as well. Thank you, like Bill said, for attending tonight. Our primary focus is going to be about filing the FAFSA. We will give some information on other things related to financial aid. If you have other questions, you can put them in the chat box. If you would like to speak to us privately after the presentation, we will be happy to answer any questions, or if you need help filing your FAFSA, we can always set up a follow-up appointment to have a Zoom session like this where we actually help you complete the FAFSA. Tonight, I have my staff with me. I have my Associate Director, Susan Erb, and then I have Yvette Rude, the Financial Aid Counselor, and our presenter tonight, and I will turn it over to her.
Well, welcome everyone. We're very excited to spend a little bit of time with you tonight. Just to let you know, this session is being recorded, so we wanted to give you that heads up so you are not shocked. So if you ask a question, you will be recorded. Later on, we will stop the recording so that if you have a personal question or you want to ask a private question, we have set up chat rooms where you can do that as well. So right now we will start the presentation. And I'm going to share my screen with you. So tonight's presentation is all about the FAFSA. So the FAFSA stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And there's a few key words in that, free. That's the first one. You shouldn't have to pay anybody to help you fill out the FAFSA. There are people who will help you do that, but I will tell you that doing the FAFSA on the web, or if you choose the mobile app, both come with a lot of support. So free is the key thing, and federal student aid is the other part. And what that basically means is this is the application that will determine federal aid, and that's all of federal aid for you, the student. So keep in mind that there's some basics about it. We're going to go in a little bit deeper about the FAFSA. First of all, who is eligible for federal student aid? Well, we've created the list right there, and you can see there's a lot of detail on there. If you have a question because you're not sure, please let us know. We'll be happy to help decipher that for you and help guide you. There's also information at studentaid.gov that can help you as well. Now, that website is a very wordy website, but the details are all there. The first thing you want to do is to obtain an FSA ID, or Federal Student Aid Password. And you can see the link on your screen. And each student needs to have their own, And that should be linked to the student's email address, the student's birth date, and social security number. Also, at least one parent should have an FSA ID as well. The reason being is in both cases, that is how the parent and or the student are going to sign their federal documents. When you're setting up the FSA ID, it's a good idea to have your cell phone near you at your computer. And the reason for this is that there is a two-step authentication process, and they're going to ask you a couple questions and you're going to submit some information. They're going to say, hey, can we text you a pass number? And you're going to put that in. So have it handy. Otherwise, it can take a little bit longer to do. The next step, of course, is to go to studentaid.gov, and you can start completing the FAFSA there once you have your FSA ID. One of the first questions they're going to ask you is if you are the parent or the student. Keep in mind that either can start the application process. They will also ask you for a save key. And with the save key, that means that you can go back in at any time and you can reopen that and complete and finish or update the FAFSA. So step 2 is just completing it. So you want to make sure that you're answering all the questions. If you're doing the FAFSA and there is an area under the dollar amounts that is 0, usually that's pre-populated with a 0. If not, please put 1 in. Of course, the FAFSA for the 21-22 academic year is open. You would use your tax returns from 2019 for both the student and the parent. If you didn't file taxes, that's okay. You can put on there that you will not file. And then if you are a student who is looking to come to Hood College in 22-23, you're gonna need to wait a year to fill that out. So a year from now, you can go ahead and if they haven't changed the website, you can certainly go there and fill that out using your 2020 taxes. So who is a parent? So this one's we see frequent errors on. And right there, you can see the criteria. So keep in mind, if you're a student who lives with both biological parents or your adopted parents, and maybe they've never married, but they do live together, you're going to use both incomes. Or let's say they married and they're living together, of course, use both incomes. If they're separated or divorced, you want to be sure to include the information for the custodial parent. Now, there are some exceptions to this. Certainly, we recommend that you reach out to us and ask the question, which one is the best one? In some rare cases, there's some special qualifiers that you might want to choose one parent over the other. Certainly, we can help you work through that to choose the most appropriate parent. If the custodial parent, the parent who you live with, is remarried, you're going to use both the custodial parent and the step parent's income. Now, in the case that, let's say they got married after they filed their 2019 taxes, you're going to need to look at both tax return and combine that information and actually fill in the FAFSA step by step. If you don't live with any parent, please feel free to contact our office. And again, we'll walk you through it. We might have a few additional questions to ask you, but we're going to help you get the best answer so that you can complete it with feeling confident. So a dependent versus an independent student. So based on the list that's in front of you, a dependent student is one who cannot answer yes to one of the following statements. Now they're going to ask you these as a part of the FAFSA application, and they're going to help determine which that you are a dependent or independent student. And then they're going to send questions to you that are appropriate for whichever you are. So whose income information do you include? Well, definitely the student. Keep in mind, if you did not file a tax return, but you had income, you can put down that you didn't file or won't file a tax return, but then you want to be sure to put your income amount in the appropriate place. For parents, it is information from your W-2 and from the tax return for the appropriate year. For the most recent or the next year, it's going to be the 2019 taxes. Again, if neither had income, you can put that information on there, but we may ask you for additional information after we receive the FAFSA update. So the data retrieval tool, this is a part of the FAFSA process. During that, they're going to ask both the student and the parent if you want to use the data retrieval tool. Most can use the data retrieval tool without an error. What it's going to do if you click on yes, is it's going to send you out to the IRS website. It's going to send a little message that says, hey, are you sure you want to leave this website? And of course, click yes, it's going to send you to the IRS. It's going to ask you a couple questions to make sure that they have the right information for the right student or the parent. They're going to ask you things about what tax return you filed and sometimes a little bit of income information, again, to make sure that they have the appropriate IRS information to import. Now, one thing you should note is that you will not see the information that it imports from the IRS into the FAFSA, at least during the initial application process. Once the application information is processed and returned back to the student, you will be able to see those amounts. Again, it's only going to pull in the information from the IRS that it needs. It's not going to pull in more, so you're not going to see every detail that's on your tax return. You will also need to add a little bit of information for W-2s. So step 3 is waiting for the student aid report to come back. A student aid report is the result of the FAFSA. Now, it has been called the student aid report forever, and it does get sent to the student. So if you're a parent and you've put your information on there, please check with your student about 3 to 5 business days after you have signed it and submitted it to see if they have gotten an email back stating, here's your student aid report and the information. There's going to be an expected family contribution listed on the opening letter. We highly encourage students and parents to read that opening letter together, because if there is something that could be an error or it noticed something that said, hey, one of the examples we see frequently is on the tax return, it said that you filed single, but you claimed that your parents were married. That's something, most of the time, that's not a big deal. They're just saying, hey, double check that and be sure. On the screen in front of you right now is a sample of what the student aid report will look like when it's sent back to your student. One of the things that we've highlighted there is the expected family contribution, or EFC. Now, in this particular student, you can see that there's all zeros, which means that the EFC for the student is 0. Next to those zeros, you see an asterisk. That means that the student has been selected for verification, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. The C next to that means that there might be a flag that needs to be resolved. But again, in that opening letter, it's going to tell you exactly why that C may be there. If there is no C, then there's nothing to worry about. You can also see the data release number, or the DRN. So if you completed your FAFSA and you're pretty sure that you put Hood College on there, but we're telling you that we didn't receive it, you can either go back in and look and add Hood College, or if you're not sure how to do that, then you can give us a call and we're going to ask you what that DRN number is. If you provide that to us, we can help you fix and make that correction. Keep in mind that the EFC is going to be the same for every college. This is what the number is for the family, not based on individual institutions. Colleges also know that this is not always an accurate picture of what you can afford, but it's based on the federal methodology or calculation. Verification. Just a minute ago, I told you that if there was an asterisk on that next to your EFC number, you were selected for verification. Now keep in mind that doesn't mean that you've done anything wrong or that there is an error. The federal government chooses approximately 1/3 of all student applicants to be selected for verification. Part of it that makes helpful for future is making sure that you use the data retrieval tool. Because if you've linked your taxes, then that's less documents that you will need to provide to the institution. We may request such documents that are listed there. And for any that are institutional documents, Hood College is going to send those to you. Please also remember, if we're requesting the tax transcript or a signed tax return from you, the signed tax return must be signed. So even if you filed it electronically, we're going to ask you to print it out, sign it, and then submit it back to Hood College so that we can complete the verification process. Now, part of this, with the verification, it's the responsibility of the institution to do the verification. So that's why we ask you for those documents, and then we complete the process here at Hood. Now, if you've also elected to have your FAFSA sent to other colleges, they may ask you for very similar documents, but they will also have their own institutional documents. Step 4, once you read that opening letter, if you notice that there is an error, feel free to make that correction. And again, send all requested documents to us as quickly as you can. So one of the other things that comes up, and the reason why the EFC is important and why the FAFSA is important, is that each college determines what a budget is, or the cost of attendance. And as you can see, there are 5 categories. For this particular student, they live on campus, so their direct cost or direct charges are going to be tuition fees, room and meal plan. The indirect charges are charges that you will not see on a bill, but need to be considered when you're calculating the cost of going to college. Those items are books and supplies, transportation, and other personal expenses. All of these combined together create the cost of attendance or the budget. So the award package, and this is again where the FAFSA is important, because some of these items that are listed in the award package are based on the FAFSA. So that's why it's important to have that. Of course, all the federal aid is based on the FAFSA. If you live in the state of Maryland and are attending Hood College, state aid will also be and can be determined by the FAFSA. So you want to make sure that that's completed, because now you've got federal and state depending on that. Something else I'd like to point out to you is that Hood College has a lot of wonderful scholarships that we offer your students, and some of those are based on need. The only way that we can determine need is by having a completed FAFSA. So that's another great reason to complete one. Here at Hood, our typical award letter will include these items that are currently on your screen. The items in the first box are gift aid, which means that you don't have to repay that. That some of that money is given to you, for example, the Founder's Scholarship and the Provost were given to you based on what you did in high school. And Then the other ones, the legacy and the honors, those get awarded, that top group gets awarded by the admission office. They let our office, the Office of Financial Aid, know what those are, and we incorporate those into the award letter. The next grouping is federal grants. And then what we anticipate the state scholarship to be. And then what your estimated costs will be after scholarships and grants. The next box is the federal loans that can only be offered to you because you completed the FAFSA. Now those will be, as you can see, there's two types there. The subsidized loan, which basically means that the federal government's going to pay the interest while you're in school. And then the unsubsidized loan, which means that the student and or the family are responsible for the interest while you're in school. In both cases, those loans do have to be repaid, but can be delayed repayment until after the student graduates or leaves college. So federal aid, again, this is based on the FAFSA. The breakdown here for a Pell Grant, the maximum for the academic year of 2021 was $6,395. So if you go back to the example of the letter that the student received that we showed you for the student aid report, and they had a 0 EFC, that student would then qualify for the maximum Pell Grant of $63.95. They would also probably qualify for FSEOG. You can see the direct loans, again, are the result of completing the FAFSA. And let's say even if the student prefers not to submit or accept the student loans, in order to award a Parent Plus loan, we still need a FAFSA completed. Federal work study is also based on the FAFSA information. So your Maryland programs. So the first two, the state senator and state delegate, aren't based on the FAFSA, but the Guaranteed Access Grant and the Educational Assistant Grant are, and they are determined by the state of Maryland. The senator and delegate scholarships, for those, the student needs to reach out to their state senator and their state delegate to see about their applications. The prime time to do this is in February and March. For the Guaranteed Access Grant and the Educational Assistance Grant, the state has a firm deadline that the FAFSA must be completed and submitted by March 1st. So even though they've extended the time frame where students and parents can complete the FAFSA, that date has not changed with the state. For additional applications, because the state also has additional scholarships, you want to visit the website listed there. Now, keep in mind that the student does need to set up a MD CAPS account, and I'll show you that in just a minute. But a key thing to note is the student, if they are awarded any scholarships through the state of Maryland, they must go back into the MHEC website and accept the award. So MD CAPS is the scholarship area for the state of Maryland education. And right there you can see the website. The student should also set up their link, their profile on that website so that they can be notified if they've been awarded any scholarships. Again, this can be created at any time, and the student should monitor it to see if they've both been awarded scholarships and to accept them if they have. One thing to note, that the state of Maryland generally does not start awarding scholarships until April and May. They will send an email to the student, so you want to make sure that the student is paying attention to their email account to make sure that they can accept promptly with the state of Maryland through their MD CAPS account any scholarship they wish to accept. We're going to talk a little bit about other aid. We've talked extensively about the FAFSA and how important it is and how it drives a lot of other scholarships for both federal and state and some institutional. Some additional institutional aid that could be offered to your student are merit aid. And that's based on their performance in high school. I'm going to let later on our VP of Enrollment Management talk a little bit about the potential for scholarships, because we are a test optional school, and I'm sure he can explain better what that means. Need-based funds, again, are awarded by the Financial Aid Office. So other funding options that you may have or may be available to tap into. If you've set up a 529 plan, please be sure to contact your 529 provider to see what information they're going to need so that you can receive those funds. Sometimes they get sent directly to the school, and sometimes they get sent directly to the student. You may wish to participate with an alternative lender through lenders such as Sallie Mae or Discover. There are a whole host of lenders. You may decide that that's a better option for you. There are also scholarships and grants that could be available to you through various sources. We encourage students often to seek out additional scholarships to help them finance their education. For VA benefits, Hood College is a yellow ribbon school. And if you have any questions about what we'll need for that, please be sure to let us know. Hood College does have 2 certifying officials, and we are happy to spend time with you talking about what the VA means, what benefits you might have, and other information, as well as what documents we'll need to help you tap into those funds. Here on your screen now is a list of outside scholarship and grant potentials. Now, the websites that you see listed are ones that are search engines. There are 2 that I'm going to point out to you that are really helpful. If you live in Frederick County, the cffredco.org, that's for the Community Foundation of Frederick. They have a lot of scholarships that they try to match up with students. In March, students should receive an email from their counseling office at their high school telling you that that application is open. The great thing about that process is that you fill out one application, and then the Community Foundation matches up with well over 70 different organizations to see if you would qualify for one of their scholarships. Another one that is very similar to that is centralscholarship.org. That you do have to be a Maryland state resident, but you can live anywhere in the state of Maryland to participate. They also have some 0% interest loans that you could qualify for. They also have an application deadline, so be sure to look at their website to find out what it is. Here's a list of other helpful websites that you might find useful to you. All of these have been listed at one point in this presentation, and if you need these listed again, we'll be happy to send you this information. So that is the end of the presentation at this time. We're happy to answer any questions you may have. You may also, if you think of a question later and you say, you know what, I can't really remember, let me give them a call or let me email them. We'll be happy to answer your questions. So at this time, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Feel free to put your questions in the chat, or